Hi everybody, I'm Ernie Cushing and I live in Hampton, and I'm a legislator and sponsor of the death penalty repeal bill, and have a number of allies here. We're at what I think it was kind of an interesting moment in history here in New Hampshire, where after 180 years of what we know of, or what we used to call the anti-gallows movement, and today we call the death penalty repeal or abolition movement, New Hampshire seems poised to join the rest of the civilized world in repealing the death penalty. We're honored to have in the state at this time representatives from the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty, who've chosen to have their steering committee meeting here in all places, Concord, New Hampshire. At kind of an opportune moment, and I was glad that some of the members of the steering committee got to be present in the State House this morning when the Judiciary Committee of the New Hampshire Senate voted by a 3-2 margin to recommend passage of House Bill 1170 and repeal the death penalty. What the presence of people from not just out of state but out of the country signals is the kind of the importance of what's taking place this week in New Hampshire. And by having our friends from around the globe who are also working to to abolish the death penalty in their respective nations, in their respective regions of the world, it reminds us of the need for us to act in solidarity. We want to think about abolition not just beyond state borders, but around international borders. And here in New Hampshire, it's good for us to remember that we're not alone. We're part of something that's much bigger than just the state of New Hampshire, much bigger than the abolition movement in the United States. But we're part of a global movement. And what we do this next week will have an impact not just on the state of New Hampshire, but it's going to have an impact throughout the globe, because it's going to inspire other people to continue the fight. And I say that not to be, prematurely celebratory, but I'm just cautiously optimistic that a week from today we're going to be marking passage by the Senate of a death penalty review. I want to introduce, we're really lucky to have one of our allies in this fight be Amnesty International, and I'm speaking right now as a member of the New Hampshire Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty Steering Committee. I think that's what it's called. Because our chair, Barbara Keshin, asked me to do it on her behalf. But I want to welcome everyone here. I want to welcome our guests from the from the world from behalf of the New Hampshire Coalition. And I want to welcome in particular, we're going to have a conversation that's going to be led by a dear old friend, Steve Hawkins, who is now the relatively new executive director of Amnesty International USA. Steve is somebody who earlier in his career was a capital defense attorney. He worked for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. He represented people who were facing death penalty, who were condemned to death, and who were executed. And Stephen's kind of a hero to me in many ways for that. I also knew Stephen when he was the executive director of the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. I had the privilege of serving on his board. And I know immediately prior to becoming the leader of the Amnesty International USA, he was at the NAACP as a vice president or something. Steve's going to moderate the conversation. He's going to be joined by our friends from the World Coalition. And I'll let Steve and everybody introduce themselves and move on to this conversation so we can draw inspiration from knowing that just as we're doing things in New Hampshire to create a culture that respects human rights, so too our allies throughout the globe
probably 20 years now going on, and I started my work 25 years ago as a young attorney defending people on death row. And really at the point in the United States when there were 130, 140 executions a year, and myself and about 24 other young, fresh out of law school attorneys were just spent all of our weeks and months in Texas and Georgia and Florida and most of the Deep South and Alabama, just stopping executions. I quickly realized that it was sort of a thrill to be in and out of courts across the country, but I quickly realized that we would lose. And while I stopped my fair share of executions, I also witnessed my fair share. And it became readily apparent to me that if we were really going to make any progress, it would not be in any court of law, but really through what we were able to do in terms of winning over hearts and minds. That's what led me to leave the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and the lawyering side, and to go to the National Coalition. During my time as an attorney, it's when I first really came to know the work of Amnesty, because coming back into my office after an execution, there would be a stack of letters from citizens around the world supporting my client, appreciating the work that I did. And it made me realize that, as Rennie was saying, that there was a global struggle at hand. And it made me begin to think about how I embrace the larger global community in terms of the work. If I had not done that, if I had let the likes of Justice Scalia decide how I viewed the world and where my horizon lay as an attorney doing the work, my spirit would have been crushed. Right? It was understanding that there was a larger global movement is what sustained me and all the other people who were doing the work at the time. Amnesty has been involved for over 30 years in terms of repeal work with respect to the death penalty. Amnesty, as most of you know, was started in 1961 to free prisoners of conscience around the world. But 20 years into Amnesty's time, it took on its first, what became thematic issue with respect to the repeal of the death penalty. Why? Because the common threads through so many of the individuals that Amnesty was trying to free around the world, the common thread were people being under threat of execution. So Amnesty realized that the fight to abolish the death penalty was at its core. And so Amnesty has been engaged ever since. But the real heroes tonight are our friends from the World Coalition, who have been just doing incredible work towards creating moratoriums around the world. They just recently, as I understand it now, have 80 countries that have signed what's called the Optional Protocol 2 to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which basically binds a country never to impose the death penalty again. So that's a monumental feat, and one that we should all be proud of. So perhaps we hold the applause until each person introduces themselves, and I will start with Kevin from Puerto Rico, and then you can pass it on. How's that?
That's okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Well, I'm Kevin Rivera from the Puerto Rico Bar Association, part of the steering committee of the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty. I preside the committee of the death penalty of the Puerto Rico Bar Association, and I think that we will present ourselves first and then have a little chat.
I'm Florence Florence Limipier. I chair the coalition. Apart from that, I'm a law professor in Paris. And my organization is the Fédération Internationale des Droits de l'Homme.
Hello, I'm Guillaume Conan. I'm working for FIACAT, which is a federation of national organizations working on the abolition of torture and death penalty. I'm working as a program officer with FIACAT, and I'm a member of the steering committee of the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty.
Hi, my name is Lin Xinyi, and I'm from Taiwan Alliance to End the Death Penalty. And I hope I can say that TADP, we are one of the most active members of the World Coalition, and also we are the member of ANPEN, it's Anti-Death Penalty Asia Network.
Excellent. Well, please give a welcome. And now we'll all take our seats on the stage. Sure? Okay. So I want to start by asking the first question, which is, what inspired the development of the World Coalition, and how do you all see the work of the coalition against the death penalty progressing now, and what do you see as in store for the future?
Do you want each of us to answer?
Whoever is inspired. Yes, sure.
It's the subject of our Sunday meeting, okay, how we say evolution of the question, so it's a big topic now, but I can just say that I was a member of, one of the founding members of the coalition in 2001, so I've seen the evolution of the coalition since then, and I was very touched by what Rennie said, is that it was honored that the coalition came here, but we are honored to be here because I think that what is fantastic is to see the interaction between the local, regional and international level. And for me this morning it was really moving to be there, sitting in the room where it happened. But to be honest, I didn't understand what happened because it was too quick.
No one did.
I had my notebook and I was about to write, but I didn't understand anything. So, but it also, I also thought that why are people so attached to death penalty, whereas death penalty is so easy to cancel? I mean, it's in 1 minute. It's incredible. It was the same in France 30 years ago. It's 1 minute. But a lot of work behind. And the World Coalition helps to this work behind. It helps I will give details later if you want, but it helps to give tools. It helps to give methods. It helps to create this solidarity movement you were talking about, Rennie, which makes that when one is executed in Texas, in Taiwan, or in Egypt, we are all moved. Mm-hmm. But we are, not only are we moved, we know how to react. Well, we try to react together, and also in a different way, according to the situation. It's a universal movement, but it's also a movement which respects the differences of the context.
Well, as Florence said, it is a topic of discussion right now about how the development of the World Coalition. And maybe just to see that more than 150 organizations around the world are committed to the World Coalition, and that actually there's done a lot of work in these past years. And looking at it from the perspective of today, I am very proud to be part of it. I am also very, very happy that this week we had 2 new countries sign signing that optional protocol, and one of those countries, we in Puerto Rico, we were actively working with. It was with El Salvador. So I know that Renee knows also El Salvador very good. So it was a moment of happiness, of course. Then you have some other news like the execution in Texas, and you say to yourself, there's a long way to go, but we are getting there. We are getting there. So I want to thank the people in New Hampshire for having us. Of course, it's still a little bit cold outside, but it's very warm here. Not only because of the temperature, but because of the reception. There's a warm reception. And just being here in the 19th state that will repeal the death penalty, it's one of those happy moments. And it is very important for Puerto Rico, as a colony of the United States, that each state can be abolishing the death penalty, because when we reach that number of 25-ish, then we can also repeal the federal death penalty that is affecting my country in the Caribbean. So maybe later we can talk about the Caribbean. We can still speak about the Abolition.
You want to say something?
TADP, Taiwan Alliance to End the Death Penalty, we were formed in 2003. Then then we went to Montreal to attend the Second World Congress. Then we learned about that World Coalition against the death penalty was formed. Then we decided to join World Coalition in 2007, I think. And I think it's really important for us, for Taiwan, because we learn from World Coalition, the member of World Coalition, and also we help each other. So, we were inspired from the member of World Coalition and also World Coalition itself. So, I think it's a very important turning point for TADT. We joined World Coalition. So, so I want to say thank you. And also, we invite Rennie to Taiwan several times. And I'm so happy and I'm so lucky that I can be here in your hometown and to see and to know that New Hampshire is going to abolish the death penalty. It will be the best news for me recently. So I'm looking forward to it.
So, what would be your advice to the citizens in New Hampshire with respect to the death penalty? The legislators, the senators are hearing all sorts of arguments from all sides. I think the audience would love to hear your perceptions as individuals from other parts of the world working on behalf of abolition. Maybe Yoon? Yeah, start there.
Yeah, from my perspective, the death penalty has no deterrent effects, basically. So that would be the first argument I would push for. Usually when we're working on these issues, some states are telling us that...
the microphone.
Sorry. Yeah, so for the deterrent effects, some states are telling us that we have to prove that it has no deterrent effects. I mean, the death penalty is a penal sanction. So that would be the other way around. I think for people who support the death penalty should have to prove that it has an effect on criminality, and basically it does not.
Anyone else want to take a crack at that question?
I think it is very unfair for us from outside to tell the people of New Hampshire how you have to think about it locally. But well, that's why we are here. We are here to share our experiences and, of course, to lobby. To lobby not only in the state capital or with the people who are making the decision makers, but also with the people. And I really think that we have to rethink how we are dealing with the crime issue. If we are always looking to punishment as one of the ways to deal with crime, then the punishment has to be a right punishment, a punishment that has an effect. If not, then there's no case about the punishment. So we know that there are numbers that we can crunch and we can think about it. There's also a lot of reasoning, a lot of moral and ethics reasoning too. It's not only numbers. So just think about it. Be rational. Sometimes we think about crime and we, the first thing that we think about when we know about a crime and when we are families of victims of murders, for example, is that we have to act with this, I don't know, the gut feeling of having vengeance. And we have to have justice, and we want a safer place. We don't want another killing. Not in the street, not by the state. And that's one of the messages that we go around, spreading. But my message to you is just reason it, study it, look at the facts, look at the numbers, and then do some ethic, internal reason too.
Yes, for me, what I would say to all citizens of the world is that the modern evolution of society is to decide that state is the state, individuals is the individuals, and to try to circumvene the power of the state. And the death penalty is one of the rare cases where we accept the power of the state on the life of the people. It's something incredible. I mean, and on the, what do you call that? The badge. Badge. Yes. Badge, yes. On the badge that you gave us this morning, I think everything is said. Why should we explain to people who kill people that we are not supposed to kill people, and you explain that by killing them? I mean, it's better said on the badge, okay? But everything is said. So, and where I'm really, really astonished in the United States, I read some books here. For me, it's a mystery because the United States is known for its feature of suspicion towards the power of the state, generally speaking. It's a generality, that's true. And here we accept that extreme power. It's a kind of paradox. So that I would say to the citizens.
How to say? Okay. In the whole world, a lot of countries they will say if we abolish the death penalty, so how about the victim's family? And we learned from Rennie and from United States that you have organization that victims is for abolish the death penalty. But it's not easy for other countries like Taiwan or like other Asian countries. So we don't have an NGO that is funded by victims member, but they oppose the death penalty. So the situation for us is very difficult. But because Rennie and some victims' family members came to Taiwan, so we learned from them. We learned something that although we are not the victim's family, but we need to take care of their feeling. So although right now we only have a very small working group of the victims, but we learned that we need to take care of them, and we need to really talk and dialogue with them. So right now in Taiwan, we start communicate with some victims association, but they for death penalty. But it's still good that we can try to understand each other, and we show the face of the death penalty for them. So it's a small beginning for us, but I think it's very important. And this is what we learned from you. So maybe I think you know better than me about the victims. What will they responsible for the issue of the anti-death penalty? But for me, I think we should really, listen to them. I think this is very important.
Well, I opened it up with a couple of questions, but I want to give members of the audience who have questions for our distinguished guests to have the opportunity to ask away. So I'm going to pass the mic to Cynthia. Anyone?
I went to the Senate committee hearing, what was it, last week, and sat for 7 hours and listened to district attorneys, judges, lawyers, such renowned people speak about the repeal of this bill. But the people that made the biggest difference to me were the victim advocates. And when I was a young mother, I used to say, had a Betty Friedan coffee clutch of women. If anyone ever hurt one of my children, I'd want them dead. I'd want them executed. But I'm 70 now, and I have wisdom. But that part about the victims always was in my head. But there were victim advocates at this committee hearing, and there was not one there that was for capital punishment. There were 7 or 9 of them, I've forgotten how many, stood up and spoke, some in detail, some in not detail, about the horrendous thing that happened to their family, and every single one of them was not for capital punishment, and saying that this does not help our family, it actually harms our family, it gives us more grief. And that very human part meant a lot to me.
Thank you. Will Thomas, I'm a member of Veterans for Peace, a group, a national group. And I had actually a part of a letter I wrote to my state senator, who you heard probably today, the chair of the committee. Her name is Senator Sharon Carson. And part of my letter says that I oppose the use of a practice which I consider to be archaic, uncivilized, and barbaric. While I can acknowledge your own personal views, I must strongly disagree with them. As a former Roman Catholic, I do know that this religion, as do all religions, vehemently reject its use. Somewhere I remember saying, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." Well, I said to her, as a citizen, I don't want elected officials, and this is what somebody just said, I believe, voting to decide who lives and who dies in my name and with my tax dollars. My wife reminded me that you represent all the citizens of your district and not just your own personal views. So, as I understand it, if Senator Susie had been present, and I wrote this 2 days ago, and she was present today, the Judiciary Committee vote would have been to recommend House Bill 1170 to the full Senate by a 3-2 margin. Please reconsider your opposition to repeal of the bill that would end the killing of human beings, even though they may have committed heinous crimes. Well, obviously, she didn't listen to me because she still voted with the Senator Putin. Now, the other thing I have very briefly is that, Mr. Hawking, you mentioned we can't do things unless we change the hearts and minds of people in terms of abolishing the death penalty. I'm wondering, in terms of some countries, in terms of the world coalition, such as China, such as North Korea, maybe Iraq and Iran, without a real free press and perhaps an impact of religions there, how do you accomplish that in those countries? I mean, we have a problem here with us, but what about those countries as well? Thank you.
Question is, how we abolish in Iran, Iraq, and North Korea? Your question is very interesting because now at the coalition we are at a time where we are aware that we must attack the hardcore, we call them the hardcore, Iraq, Iran, China. So we have a member in Iraq, for instance, is always calling for our help. Used to be a member of the steering committee until last June. The very problem is that one of the problems we can't get there for security reasons. Okay, it's obvious, and we don't know exactly the situation on the field. So we have first a problem of finding facts, knowing who are our allies, our enemies, and so on and so forth. In Iran it's different. In Iran we know the facts. We have a lot of members. We have members from Iran in our coalition, and we have a great network. It's not a problem of knowing the facts thanks to these people. It's the problem of the state and of the strict application of the Sharia, and also the instrumentalization of the war against drugs, which was very clearly made on this topic. So, yes, and in North Korea, we don't even have images from North Korea. So my organization released a report on North Korea 2 months ago, but it was, facts, testimonies, and so it's extremely difficult even to know the situation. So I think it's one very important thing that for the Secretary General and so on of the United Nations, we always say to the states, okay, you apply the death penalty, first of all, publish facts. You have this obligation, it's an internal obligation to say at least what's going on. And for the states you are talking about, Iraq, China, they don't even do that.
Part of the question was of some of the problems that we can find in some countries about free press or religion, and I don't know a religion that says you have to keep, but I know that some people use religion as a shield against not only religion but sovereignty and some other excuses to go with this human rights life. But there are a lot of things that you can do when you don't have those tools. You have NEMs, you have grassroots movements, you have other countries in the region that can form, as in Asia, as in the Caribbean, that can form regional coalitions to begin with this movement against capital punishment. And I wanna have a point in terms of the Caribbean, because this year was dedicated to fighting capital punishment in the Caribbean region. Greater Caribbean region, has like 20-something countries, 25-ish countries in the whole region. You can separate in terms of cultural, and if you see the numbers of the countries that have the capital punishment and those who have the capital punishment in their laws, it's most of the countries that have the capital punishment is the English-speaking Caribbean versus the Spanish-speaking Caribbean. I know that there are a couple of countries in the Spanish-speaking Caribbean that still have the capital punishment in law, but they are not applying it. You can speak about Cuba. The last execution in Cuba was in 2003, and there are more than 10 years that they don't apply executions. They don't have death penalty sentences. Actually, they have no one in death row right now. And there have been some expressions of, actually from Fidel Castro, the ex-president, against the capital punishment in these recent years. So there is space in these countries that retain capital punishment in the Spanish-speaking Caribbean. In the English-speaking Caribbean, we have another problem. When we go to the moratorium vote in the UN, these are new countries, most of them. Countries that were formed in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. And a lot of them are reacting to London, and they are saying, hey, we are southern states right now. We have a high crime rate, and we think that one of the ways to deal with the crime, in terms especially with homicide, is having the death penalty. And as a lot of countries, they are supporting each other in this moratorium vote. And when you see the votes against the moratorium of the death penalty in the world, 25% of those votes are from this Caribbean region. We don't have a lot of executions. Actually, we haven't had executions in the last 5 or 6 years because there are a lot of lawyers who are fighting these cases in the Privy Council. Actually, that's the highest court of a lot of English-speaking Caribbean countries in London, the Privy Council. So you can see how this colonial past is still affecting laws and of course the death penalty in the Caribbean region. But we have formed this regional coalition, and we are working there with the help of the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty and Amnesty International. This past year, we were in Trinidad and Tobago, we were in Grenada, we were in Jamaica. Which other countries? Of course, in Puerto Rico. And right now, we have this regional coalition with the Secretariat in Puerto Rico that are working. These people are working. Each month, they are speaking with each other. How are we going to go through with this struggle in the region? And we are going to have the next meeting of the working group in the Caribbean in San Juan, when we will be in the General Assembly of the World Coalition that is going to take place in June 2022 in San Juan, Puerto Rico. So, this is an invitation for you to come to San Juan. It's beautiful. The weather is it's the same like here, you know this. I know that Maria was telling me that she wanted to go to this beach that is ranked number 3 in the world in Flamenco in Culebra. So we can also go to the beach when we are fighting death penalty. So yeah, why not? So this year has been dedicated to the Caribbean, and it's for a reason, not only because of the moratorium vote, but because of crime rates. It's one of, I think it's the more violent region in the world. If you don't look, of course, regions that are at war, the Caribbean region is the most violent region in the world. And there are a lot of ways to deal with crime, and of course, having that penalty hasn't worked in the Caribbean as in the rest of the world. So we are tackling the crime issue. It is related to drug trafficking. It is part of the bridge between some of the producing countries and the demanding countries, not only the United States but also in Europe, especially the UK. So we are tackling the other issue of crime because we cannot let the state kill, but we don't want people killing in the street either. So we are. That's part of what we are here for. You know, that it is a joint struggle that we have to make for a better society.
Hi, Mark Barker. I'm, I guess amongst other things, the clerk of the support committee for the New Hampshire program of the American Friends Service Committee. I'm also a dual national, British and American. And my worry is even if we do, and I'm hopeful that we will, pass the repeal of the death penalty here, complacency. I noticed that in the presentation, there are a number of states that have reinstated the death penalty and tried to hide it. In Britain, I don't think there's a risk of imposing the death penalty again, but if you poll the population, the majority of the population supports the death penalty. Once we get rid of it, and I was complacent in this country when the Supreme Court got rid of the death penalty, I thought. And I thought that, well, didn't need to do anything. What are we going to do to make sure the death penalty stays repealed?
Yes, it's true that we saw in the presentation that some states have reintroduced the death penalty, but they haven't legally abolished. I mean, they had a moratorium. I mean, I'm thinking about Nigeria, which was presented as an example, which reintroduced the death penalty in 2013. They had a moratorium for 7 years, but they didn't repeal the death penalty from its legislation. And then when the death penalty has been abolished in the legislation, the security which can be introduced is the ratification of the Constitutional Protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which basically is the safeguard in favor, in order not to reintroduce the death penalty.
Can I respond for the previous question? Yeah, sure. Taiwan and China, we are two different independent countries, but I can still say something about China. I want to give two examples. 2 years ago, EU, they have a lot of projects in China for the human rights issue, and especially for the death penalty issue in China, they have a lot of projects. But you can see that they support the professors to do the research. So in China, they can do a lot of research in abolition of the death penalty, but only in the academic level. But 2 years ago, a professor from China, he visits Taiwan, and he comes to me, and he asked me about the question how we do the movement of the abolition of the death penalty, because he said that EU give them money, but they are not satisfied with all the research, all the academic level events. They want to see if they can do something to the public. So the professor, they need to find a way to do the public awareness instead of only research. So I think this is a way. Another example is we have contact with the Chinese human rights lawyers, and although the situation for them is very difficult, but they still try hard to do something to abolish the death penalty, especially for defense for the people who face the death sentence. And what they do right now is they gather together, they help each other with the case. So you can see that if there is a death penalty case, they can call different lawyers, work together to help each other. And they can also visit Taiwan too. And we have the events to exchange experience about this. So I think although China is the most difficult country in the world, and they have the highest execution numbers, but still we have a chance to help them to exchange experience to them. And I think for the human rights lawyers in China, because sometimes they are invited to Europe, or I don't know if they are invited to United States. But I think this is very good for them, because in China they are isolated. But if sometimes they cannot, the government will not allow them to go abroad, but sometimes they will. So I think if we can try to invite them to other countries and exchange experience with others and give them some support, I think this is very important for them. So maybe New Hampshire can invite some, Chinese human rights lawyers to here to encourage them. Yeah. Thank you.
Just a little answer to the question of what to do next. Young spoke about the second national protocol, but there are a lot of things that we have to do when we abolish the death penalty. First of all, we have to keep the issue in terms of the discussion of human rights. Then we can make this topic be treated as a topic of slavery, for example. We ban slavery, and we don't have that traditional slavery right now. Yes, we have human trafficking, and maybe we can feel that we are slaves of our work or something like that, but we don't have that kind of slavery. So I know that we can do the same with this topic of death penalty. There are ways to do it. Keep with the research. Keep speaking about it. We have to remember what happened, what is happening, and what do we want to happen in the future for the future generations.
Yes. And then I give you the floor. And then it becomes, in France it was very recently that we got rid of the death penalty. It was in 81. Now, there are some people who are in favor of death penalty in France, but it's a matter of personal opinion, that's all. I mean, it's no more a matter of politics.
I'd like to know a little bit more about how it came to pass that European pharmaceutical companies have begun to refuse to sell drugs necessary to conduct executions in our country, and if you had any influence on that at all, or whether that was just a corporate decision on their part.
Something's going to answer, she knows
The
very
mic
well
will
the
wait.
topic.
Oh, right here. Okay.
And she speaks very well English.
Well, several members of the World Coalition were actually very instrumental in working with the manufacturers, or I wouldn't say working with to begin with, to actually convince them that they had to stop, and we did not want them to remove these products from the medical field, because that hinders professionals, and that was a major problem when the sodium thiopental was actually no longer available at all, because it was an American manufacturer, but it was using a very modern factory in Italy, because you have to understand that these products have a very small profit margins. So for this lab, which is Austria, having it done in Italy was making it worthwhile. But the Italian government stepped in very quickly, because there was a lot of lobbying through parliamentary NGOs, and they said, okay, you can manufacture this in our land, but on one condition: you are legally responsible. It must never be used for human executions. And Austria realized that they didn't want to get into that, and said, okay, we're not going to distribute it anymore. Then a number of cardiologists and surgeons really were very upset, because they needed this particular product. So when the issue came up for the pentobarbital, there are many ways for manufacturers to distribute their products in the United States through a controlled distribution system, to ensure it doesn't go to the Department of Corrections. So the problem came up with the Danish laboratory, and quite honestly, they did not care, clearly did not care that this product was being used for execution. What they were worried about, that we did a lot of lobbying on the shareholders associations. They lost a lot of money on the stock exchange the shareholders saying, we don't want anything to do with this, we're selling our shares. So they said, okay, we'll put up that control distribution system. And since then, the organization in question, which is Reprieve in London, lobbied a lot of the American pharmaceutical laboratories to sign a sort of a contract on ethics, so that they would, permit to not sell any products, because they will come up with new ideas. Believe me, we haven't seen the end of that one. But today the problem is an American problem, because it's with compounding pharmacies, and we come from Europe, can't do anything. So the European Union added to a list of products that are forbidden for exports as a product used for torture, or lethal injection products. So that sort of locked, there was another lock. Germany did take also some specific legislation, so did Britain. So, it's locking up around, but now the work really needs to be done in America. And I'm sorry to say that it is not done on a nationwide level, and it's really, really urgent.
I hope this doesn't come across as naive, because I don't mean it to, but I'm aware that when President Obama was running for president, and when he was a state senator, he was instrumental, correct me if I'm wrong, in the moratorium on the death penalty in Illinois. I get the politics that he faces today. I'm just wondering if there is a glimmer of hope, knowing that he played that role at some point for the U.S., and what your take on that might be for federal death penalty issues. And that probably is a bit naive.
I think that that then State Senator Obama played, a minor role. I mean, he joined in the effort, but I don't think he led the effort in any way. And some of us who were involved back then, trying to bring about the moratorium in Illinois, knew who were the key senators at the time. So it's not surprising to me that the president has been quiet on it. What we do see, though, in terms of where the federal death penalty lies, is that there hasn't been, I get on thin ice here because some of my colleagues may have better intelligence than I, but while there are people still going to the road, there have not been efforts that I remember like a decade ago when we were really struggling to stop some of the very real movement towards federal execution. So the federal death penalty is sort of in the same area of sort of limbo that we find several of the states at this point. I wanted to raise a question though for, and it goes to how we got to perhaps compound pharmacies. What is the role of a larger youth movement that connects with social media? How do we begin to use some of the new modern tools that frankly weren't around when I was doing the work 25 years ago that we have now? And if you all were to give me advice as the executive director of Amnesty about how to use sort of our social media department, what would that be?
We are a coalition, okay?
Hello. So I think that Florence.
Yeah.
I'm tired. So jet lag is killing me, but so I think Florence called me to answer to this question because I'm a member of the staff of the Work Coalition. I'm not the person who's following